Hey guys, Christian Soder here for RedChipPoker.com, and we're back in the forum. So today we have a post from Scores, and I'll be answering this. And this thread got pretty heated, and a lot of people had a lot of different thoughts. So I just want to clear the air and kind of say what I think is best, and we could continue discussing it that way. So yeah, in this spot, Scores is playing this guy who's kind of pretty crazy. He plays all kinds of hands. He's flashing his cards, showing all kinds of nonsense. Um, and in this spot, we're playing 1-2. Effective stack is going to be $200. Villain's under the gun +2, and he opens to 15. And we're to his direct left with Ace Queen offsuit. And now we have a decision between calling and 3-betting. So, a lot of people, this was a big part of the discussion, and I just want to clear up my thought process on what it is that I consider when I'm deciding whether to call a 3-bet. So first thing is, how does our opponent make the most amount of mistakes? Is our opponent the type that if we isolate him, he's gonna shut down? So if we 3-bet him, is he gonna play fit or fold poker post flop? If he is, then maybe we want to call and allow him to make post flop mistakes. So we don't want to save our opponent from himself by 3-betting him all the time. But at the same time, we want to keep track of our own frequency. If our frequency is low today, we still want to 3-bet just to keep our frequency up. We don't want to seem like a nit. So that's two things to consider. Thirdly, where are we in consideration to the rest of the table? If we call, how the rest of the table going to act? If we call, are we going to create a wave of callers behind us? Because that's not good, especially when we want to face a player that makes a ton of mistakes. We kind of want him to ourselves. So, if it's cutoff versus button, maybe we might want to flat because there's not that many people behind. So there's a lot of things to consider. First thing, like I said, how does our opponent make mistakes? How does our own 3-betting frequency look like? How does the rest of the table going to react to our action? So those are three things you want to really consider when you're deciding whether to 3-bet or just call. So in this spot, I think 3-betting is completely the best play. This is why, because our opponent's is not one to make our opponent's not one that he's going to play fit or fold poker if we 3-bet him. He's shown to play all kinds of trash. He takes really weird lines all the time. So yes, we might, if we 3-bet him, he might not take the very spewy lines, and maybe calling it's okay. But if we call, how's the rest of the table going to do? Are they going to call too, or are we going to create a wave? As well as how's our own 3-betting frequency looking like? Have we not been 3-betting a lot? Maybe we should consider 3-betting so that we get action later we have big hands as well. We have to keep our frequency up as well. So I think here it's a prime spot where we want to 3-bet. We want to isolate this guy, and have him to ourselves, as well as we have a pretty good value hand against a player that's looking to be pretty weak. So in this hand, you just decide to call, and luckily for us, we go heads up to the pot, and the flop comes down Queen of clubs, 8 of clubs, 6 of spade. And villain bets 25, and now we have a decision between calling and raising again. So in this situation, we want to play for stacks, right? And we obviously have a pretty big hand, definitely underrepresented against our opponent. And there's a ton of hands that our opponent has equity with. Jack 10 has equity, all club draws have equity. There's a ton of gutties in this spot. And we're not sure that our opponent is going to fire another barrel, so we don't want to just call and let him actualize his equity going forward. I think this is a spot where we definitely just raise and play for stacks, as well as the flop is Queen 8-6 with 2 clubs, and we hold the ace of club, allowing us to back into the nuts a lot more often as well. So I think this is a spot where you just raise and get it in, and you shut out his equity share when he has completely nothing, as well as you play for stacks when he actually has something. This is you don't want to just call it and then get sucked out on, and then be kicking yourself like, oh, how I could have played this better. And you know, I'm telling you how you could have played it better. You should have isolated your opponent pre-flop because you have a ton of people behind you. You have a value hand versus this opponent. And when you didn't do that, you know, you should have just played for stacks on the flop. So I'm not sure how this hand planned out. The turn comes the 4 of hearts and villain bets 50. Now we should definitely be like fist pump trying to get it in. This board is definitely not as like, there's a ton of rivers that this board is gonna kill action with. You know, we need to just hurry up and get this money in before this board gets worse. So that's definitely how what I would have done as played. But there's a lot of things to consider in this hand. And pre-flop, I told you all the decision matrices I go through. You know, his frequencies of like what he does post-flop versus pre-flop. Does he play fit or fold? How does our own frequency look like in terms of 3-betting? How many people are behind us? You know, all those things are things you want to consider before 3-betting. Post-flop, I think as played, you should definitely be raising flop trying to get it in. And as played, I think you should just jam turn. So hopefully that clears up some of the things like that's been going on in the thread. So if you guys have any questions, obviously just, you know, fire it in this thread and I'll just get right to it. All right. So with that said, peace.